No shortage of doom and gloom out there, man. And I've been keeping tabs on everything what's happening. Actually, shout out to Dan Foch who interviewed you as well with iPro with what's happening there, the calamity there. But one thing at a time. So I want to make Reddit proud because they love doom and gloom, and there's tons of it to go around. And the last time we spoke was, I think, six or 7 months ago, and I kind of went through the transcript of that video, and I want to kind of do an update. But before we go there, I have a question for you, okay?
Sure.
So, last 6 months, I've been thinking, okay, I want to invest some money. I've been thinking, okay, real estate, that's kind of my wheelhouse, a little shaky ground. Stocks, very frothy, all-time high. So I'm thinking, okay, what is a good place to park some money right now for the
European
long term?
defense.
Oh, no, no, oh, forget that, forget that. I have even better. This is where I need your help. So I've been thinking, investing in a top tier real estate law firm in the Greater Toronto area long term is probably a very good bet. So I
You're
figured,
not,
what's
you're not allowed to. You have to be a paralegal or a lawyer to invest.
oh, see, but here I was thinking maybe we want to scale up legalclosing.ca, maybe a couple of friends, get our beaks wet, maybe some of our YouTube audience. I think it's a good bet. Your business must be booming right now.
I actually ran for the as a bencher for the Law Society. And I was saying we need to allow investment in law firms. The reason lawyers are pathetic is because we cannot have outside investment, which means we can't have stock investment, which means we can't list publicly on stock exchanges. We can't get money into the profession because lawyers are cheap as shit. And the only people who will invest in Ontario based law firms are lawyers or paralegals. So honestly, I'd love to, but also a law firm isn't a good investment. There's better places. I know.
Well, by the way, thank you for the referral and shout out to Matt Gibson, who helped me with my own legal situation with real estate.
Nice.
Yeah, he did a great job for me. We had something going on for over a year, so it was finally resolved in May. But the reason I thought to myself, law firms are the way to go is I emailed him once, and I think it must have been like 4 or 5 months ago. And his autoresponder, first of all, he always has an autoresponder because he just doesn't have the time. And then the autoresponder said, not only am I no longer taking new clients, I'm no longer taking new cases from existing clients. And I'm like, all right, man, what a backlog. Like that is a good problem to have as a business person. So that's why I thought to
It's,
myself,
well,
you
well,
guys must be
I'll tell you
busy.
where you invest. If you want to invest in the legal profession,
Yes, here's where we're at. You know what? We've been beating on a dead horse for a while, but I wanted to get like a gauge or a temperature feel of what's the temperature in the room right now in the lawyer boardroom from like 6 months ago. So an article came out from the McLean's. Basically, somebody bought a condo without the intention of ever closing. They can't assign it now. The same old story. So last time we spoke, you said defaults were happening regularly in the pre-con space, and it's been 6 months later. And what I want to know is, has the trend accelerated, slowed, stayed steady? Like, where are we at with that whole big picture?
it's getting worse and it's getting better. I'm going to explain. And this is not a cop out answer, by the way, where I sit there and say, in this area, it's getting worse, and in this area, it's getting better. No, 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 no. Broadly, it's getting worse. The pain is getting worse because the exits continue to close. The prices of product continues to decline. This is true in the surrounding areas of the GTA, and it's true of the GTA core. It's true in the condo market. It's true in pretty much all markets except for high end. And the vast majority of us are not in high end. Thus, the decline continues, and thus the exits continue to evaporate, which brings us back again to power of sales, which again brings us back to refinancing. The truth is, I'll get to the good in a second because there is good. The truth is that Canadian incomes haven't been able to substantiate real estate prices for a long period of time. Um,
Yeah.
and Bringing this down to level is doing something that was necessary for our children. For the first time home buyers are making up the vast majority of purchases because finally they're allowed back into the market with the falling prices. The boomers' pain is the 20-year-old's gain. And that is a very real thing. 20-year-olds were totally priced out of the market. They simply couldn't get in. And now we have 20-year-olds that are finally saying, hey, these prices have fallen from 1,400 a square to 850 a square. I can see my way close to actual home ownership again. And, the longer that we stay going down or even plateauing, the more it hurts those people with the assets. Because remember, plateau is going down too, right? If inflation goes up by 4 or 5%, and inflation is expected to rear its ugly head significantly in the States because of what's happening with tariffs. It hasn't fed in yet, but now we're starting to see it feed in significantly. So if inflation continues to rise and prices remain the same, then effectively it's the same effect. Your value is going down. And so our younger people are having a chance for the first time. So that's good news. But in terms of the broad-based pain of people who own real estate, who talk around your kitchen table, no, it's getting worse and worse. So where's the bright side? Well, the bright side is that when we spoke 6 months ago, people were still in la land. Unlike the commercial market that repriced product nearly immediately in 2022, that is to say, banks just said, screw this, and repriced land holdings at 60% of value. And the lends, which are usually a 1 year commercial lens, on every renewal said, no, new values, here we go. The residential market took a long time to reprice. And in part, that was because people had a reticence to accept the fact that the values of their properties had fallen and said, no problem, I'll wait. Why were they able to do that? They were able to do that because coming off 2022, they had basically immersed their head in fresh oxygen for 10 years. They were in this bubble where they had been able to refinance, and so much money had flown in from their asset values and that were invested in stocks, bonds, whatever it was, that they were able to ride it out for a long period of time. And so they had the privilege of being able to say, I'm just going to wait for the market to return. And indeed they did for 2022, 2023, 2024. But you can only hold your breath for so long, no matter how much oxygen you inhale before. And in 2023, 2024, we started to see cracks in the system. Escalating cracks, people hitting desperate times, and that desperation has continued. Now, and this is where the bright side comes in, there is a broad-based perception that the markets are heading down, not up. There is a broad-based perception that holding on for another year does not a miracle make. And as a result, people are taking their haircuts. As a result, the broad repricing that took so long to effect and was so de minimis over the course of months has kind of started in gusto. The best option for us in a repricing scenario is to reprice quickly, not slowly. Slowly means we can have the 10 years of stagflation that Japan experienced. We don't want that. We want to have a repricing of our assets. And while our commercial assets have repriced, our residentials have not. What we are starting to see is an escalation of the repricing, which means, yes, a falling of prices and a faster falling of prices than we've seen before. But that means we hit the bottom also earlier. In fact, for the first time in my office, and for the first time in my career for the past 3 or 4 years, I'm hearing people say, I got a really good deal, and I believe that it cannot go much lower than this. I haven't heard that for a long time, but I don't think that they're off base either in that assessment. After all, if you're buying property that was assessed at 1,400 and is now 800, and you're getting these massive steals in the new construction space, you're probably not that far off. I mean, if you look at what Canadian income can afford, it's roughly there. So it may go down a bit further, but it's not likely to have a precipitous slide. And it's once you reach that broad-based realization that everyone needs to take their haircut and that there is a new price floor, that ultimately we can build from that level. I tend to think we are starting to hit that area. I see this as the calm before the storm. The storm subsiding and a calm ahead. We're still in the storm, but you know how in the storm you can sometimes see like bright sunlight far, far, far in the distance? We're there. We're not at a point where we see the storm clouds ahead. We're in the middle, and we're kind of coming to something close to the end. Now, I don't want to I don't want to make this into a fairy tale. I don't believe that at the end of the storm, we then hockey stick up. We may still plateau, but that's healthy for a country. Canada shouldn't be based on an economy that prides itself on basically sitting bums in homes. That's not a vibrant economy. That isn't an economy that we can be proud of. It's not an innovation economy. Our money should not be, our best and our brightest shouldn't be figuring out how to securitize assets. Our best and our brightest should be, if we take a look at leading economies of the world, and I think we can all appreciate that the leading economy of the world is now China. There was an interesting article that just came out in The Atlantic called The Lawyers versus the Engineers, whereas the American economy is a bunch of lawyers that pass laws to preserve wealth. China's economy is a bunch of engineers that are trying to win the technological stack of the future. Which one of those will be successful? I know where I would put my money on if I had to bet. And truthfully, Canada in its building cycles doesn't really do much to basically meld itself into the Chinese model of technological future and innovation and hard industry and the like. To the extent that we no longer see real estate as a future and we have to actually secure a new vision for this country, harking back to the 60s and 70s of hard industry, of technological innovation, and all of those great things that really produce an innovative and structurally vibrant economy, it's not the worst thing that we may plateau for a couple of years.
So on the topic of pre-con and closing and like obviously seeing the end of the light at the end of the tunnel, I guess since our last talk, are buyers and developers settling more often, or are lawsuits still being pushed through the courts? Just from just a legal perspective.
Yeah, lawsuit. I don't know that there's been any major uptick in lawsuits. Let's be very frank. We're going to see. So let's just talk. If we're just talking the new build section, again, a smaller section of the economy, we're going to see the pain continue to escalate as we talked about before until 2027. Yeah. Why? Because the product in 2022, which was sold at premium prices, goes till 2027. And the prices kept on going up to 2022. So there's a further and further discrepancy from market price. Truthfully, we see quite a few builders suing, but we saw quite a few builders suing 6 months ago as well. Traditionally, it's a bit, with the exception of Center Court that always sues, it's a fool's errand to try to guess who's going to sue. It's based on how much money they have, what the particular project value is, whether or not they have purchasers for these units standing behind. Like, there's so many different factors that go into the decision to sue. Not everyone is being sued, but a good deal are. Many people are chancing lawsuits. I have 2 in my office today where we are writing to the builder saying, no, we're walking, take us. Yesterday, I had one guy who left Canada entirely, but he owns 3 precons that are going to have to close. So this is happening all the time, and the builders' numbers are getting worse and worse. As to what the builders do, that's its own question. They are going to really be hurting in the coming years, and how that plays out is something that, because they're smarter than the average bear, they are preparing for. They know what the buildings occupy. 30% non-closures is de rigueur now on projects. They're preparing for it. They're getting their money. To some degree, their one loophole, which has been, well, okay, we'll just take this product and rent it, has somewhat dissipated it as well, because rental product and rental values are falling. But they don't have a choice, because that's highest and best no matter what they do with the product is renting those units. And so to some degree, every time they have a building turnover which doesn't lease 30% of the units, if they are not able to sell them, which more and more of them are doing, they're not turning to leases anymore. So they sell them at a fire sale and just take a hit. But if they choose to lease, what they're doing is they're further pushing down the lease prices. Again, to the benefit of the 20-year-olds. Everything here is to the benefit of the 20-year-olds, but to those of us who are asset holders, that portends great pain.
You know what? It's actually been kind of refreshing to see, like as dumb as it sounds from my end, it's been good to see prices come down because it is giving optimism. It's like the world is healing, right? I just did a deal with a first time home buyer last week, and it's like probably the first time home buyer I've done in like a long time. I had I think two this year, which is and I started my career with these people, and it's like now I can't even remember the last time I did one until these two
As
recent ones.
it's in everyone's interest to have lower prices. Like even those people who have massive assets, on a systemic basis, if you do not provide for a future for your children, and I'm not talking about your individual children, I'm talking about children generally. If you deprive an entire generation of the means of wealth and the acquisition of a future, then there is social unrest.
Yeah,
They
absolutely, I
have
agree.
nothing to
Yeah.
gain from the system because they have nothing invested in it. And for 5 to 10 years, we have deprived people of the ability to gain assets at critical points in their life. Had that continued for much longer, social unrest was pretty much assured. So this is to everyone's benefit, but
Agreed.
it's
Yeah.
benefit through pain. And
Yeah,
it's
no,
a
but
lot
I
of pain.
agree.
Yeah.
It's no, it's 100%. You know what? I think we don't spend enough time talking about this, but I think, like I said, the world's healing. It's a good thing. And again, if there's no path to home ownership, I know people are like, but you can rent, but it's just not the same. You want to be a homeowner, it provides a different type of person, different type of neighborhood. It's better for everybody. So I think we're on the same page here. Quick plug for you. Is there an economies of scale to use the same lawyer? So let's say the same building has a bunch of defaults, like you're saying, 30% of people are defaulting. Would it make sense for those defaulting to use the same lawyer rather than a bunch of them using different lawyers to represent them to the builder?
That's a good question. Um, no, because lawyers aren't particularly smart creatures when it comes to business. But I mean, if you were able to technically assemble enough build like people who are defaulting, then that itself can be packaged, right? Like if you were able to assemble 20%, the way builders do, if you were able to assemble 20% of the building and all the defaults, you could probably bring that to a serious investor and say, hey, everyone's ready to walk from their deposits. You could control all these units. Is that of value to you? They may still say no because 20% discount from 2022 values still doesn't do it. But there's certainly deals to be cut in aggregate that don't exist in the singular, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just don't think that individual real estate lawyers can wrap it up that way, nor are they particularly adept at negotiating the vicissitudes of business that would permit them to cut these deals. I don't even think they know where they needed to go. So the answer to you is, in theory, perhaps, practically, no.
And for an end user, let's say I have a condo or two condos or a bunch of condos that I can't close on. Would I want to use my regular real estate lawyer, or do I want to use somebody like you who's doing this day in, day out and has multiple cases? Because I figure somebody like you for me, maybe there is a benefit as the end user.
It's funny because if I'm to reveal the curtain at this point, I'm supposed to say, oh no, you're supposed to absolutely use me. But I'm going to say no for two reasons. One, there's no advantage to telling people to use me because there's no good outcome where we bill. Like we don't bill for people who are defaulting. They're already in a hell of time. And so it's just a lot of extra time from our office where we're sitting there talking to people and everything else. But also we don't have a magic wand. The most we are able to do is really tell people about their ability to default. Default is allowed. It's legal. There's nothing illegal about defaulting. It's choice. And so all we're doing is informing people of what the choice is and what the repercussions are using math. And then we don't have any magic wand. In the same way that we tell the builder, hey, these guys are defaulting. Yes, we preface it with a very nice note and we say, hey, here's the circumstance. Please, please, please consider our circumstance. What we mean is please don't sue us because they never give you a mutual release. we do that. We try to package it well, but at the end of the day, we're still packaging shit, so it still smells, right? So there's not
Uh,
much that we can do. And truthfully, every person who comes into my office, and there are tons of them, and asks for help, it's not like we have a magic wand here and we can do anything that your other lawyers can't, other than kind of explain the math. And if you're interested in that, I have done a video on how the math is calculated, because rather than go through this now, I literally just send people the video and I say, here it is. You could take a look and you can see how you should be thinking about this from a mathematical perspective, because again, breaching is legal. So it's a question of whether or not you choose to breach or whether or not you choose to move forward based on the way the law will interpret this contract and what the repercussions are.
yeah, makes sense. Last question, to be respectful of your time. Unrelated to pre-construction, related to real estate, and this is the hot topic right now, is this iPro brokerage that just recently closed down, was forced to close down. Allegedly, they took or stole, or millions of dollars went missing. So I know you covered this with our friend Dan Foch on his YouTube channel. I guess what I'm trying to understand from your perspective is, I really have two questions. So real estate right now is kind of self-regulated. Is there an argument to be made that government should step in? And if so, how would that look like? Or what should it look like?
There's an argument to be made, but it will never happen, because
Okay.
all professions are self-regulating and all professions go through cycles like this. The Law Society just went through this with Cartier and Bouygues, which took funds as well. Truthfully, self-regulation is a much better mechanism. They're closer to the industry. They understand it better. What should happen is there should be an ombudsman for RICO. That is to say, an appellate board or someone you can go to when you disagree with the way RICO handles something. That's different, but self-regulation should ultimately continue. And I don't think anyone's seriously discussing removing that, just as an aside. The province can, they absolutely are allowed, but self-regulation is generally a better way of dealing with things than having provincial regulation, which is incredibly detached and frankly then requires the same inputs from the profession regardless. So it's better that this actually be there.
And,
What was the second question?
and the last question is, given what happened there, do you think there will be criminal charges laid against these people?
I think there will be, but in a pathetic means. I think the reason that there will be is because of realtor pressure. To their credits, realtors were absolutely disgusted by this and see this as fundamentally a break with the trust that they are trying to build with clients, even if RICO didn't, the registrar for RICO didn't. And to that end, there has been immense industry-wide pressure that I am witnessing to ultimately see and prove to others that this is the behavior that will not be tolerated. To the extent that criminal charges are going to be pressed, it is going to be because there is revulsion at the way that this has been dealt with, not because we live in a regulatory regime that ultimately, like the States, would put pressure and charges together in 5 minutes. By the way, our securities industry has strict regulation as well, but the Law Society, the brokers, the engineers, we lack in serious enforcement, serious fists. There will be serious fists for this. I think that's my own prediction, but again, only because the public eye is on this, only because there's so much pressure, and only because there's so much demand. People's jobs, political jobs, now depend upon getting to the bottom of this and doing this properly in view of everyone. So I do think that there will be a different approach.